chapter 6 on page 54. Chapter 6 on page 54. Babu Jaza'il Walidain. The chapter to repay the kindness of parents. On page 54. There's a few extra books if you just want to, I don't know if you want the book. Hadith number 10. Inshallah, we're starting from hadith number 10 on page 54. حدثنا قبيصة قال حدثنا سفيان عن سهيل بن أبي صالح عن أبيه عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال لا يجزي ولد والده إلا أن يجده مملوكا فيشتريه فيعتقه. Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu has said that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, no son can ever fully repay his father for the favors his father did. No son could ever repay his father except that if he finds his father as a slave, then he buys him and then releases him and sets him free. This hadith is telling us, Rasulullah ﷺ is telling us, that the favors of the father upon the son are so much that it is impossible for this son to ever pay back his father for the favors that his father did for him. But there was only one way. There's only one way in which this boy could ever pay back his father. And what is it? If this boy was to find his father in the state that his father is a slave, and he purchases his father as a slave and sets him free, giving him a new life, setting him free. In this situation, he will be repaying his father. Now, at this hadith, I would like to have a discussion on something which many people bring up against Islam. Slavery in Islam. Slavery in Islam. The Quran discusses slavery. The hadith discuss slavery. And when people read this, they have many objections. And many of our youth have objections that why is the Quran condoning and permitting slavery? What's going on here? So this is the first hadith where the topic, this is the first hadith where the topic of slavery has come. So we'll discuss slavery in Islam for a little bit. And now since it's raining, all the kids had to come inside. Yes, it's good. First thing we need to understand. First thing we need to understand when discussing the topic of slavery in Islam, we need to understand the fact that slavery was a common practice before Islam. All the major empires built their entire economy and societies on the concept of selling and buying slaves. The pyramids were built with slaves. Great Wall of China built with slaves. Roman Empire, majority of it built with slaves. So first thing we need to understand when we discuss this is that slavery was a practice that was there well before Islam. It was a practice that was also deeply embedded into the society of the Arabs, just as it was in every other culture around the world at the time. So what happens? The Quran gives some ways in which slavery should be dealt with. And those things we're going to talk about that right now. The first thing the Quran did was, number one, a general encouragement for the freedom of freeing of slaves. As the Quran says, فَلَقَتَحَمَ الْعَقَبَةِ وَمَا أَدْرَاكَ مَا الْعَقَبَةِ فَكُّ رَقَبَةٍ. That you have not passed the hard valley. What is the hard valley? The freeing of slaves. Here the Quran is encouraging what? The freeing of slaves. This is what we see in the beginning. So straightforward. And this ayah is a Makki ayah. In the time of Makkah, the Quran is telling free slaves. Free slaves. First point. Let's understand the next point. The Prophet ﷺ in his actions is reported to have personally freed over 41 slaves himself. 41 slaves himself. The next thing that the Quran did. The Quran created a system called Al-Mukatiba. Mukatiba was a system whereby a slave could buy his own freedom. And the Quran says, وَالَّذِينَ يَبْتَغُونَ الْكِتَابَ مِمَّا مَلَكَتْ أَيْمَانُكُمْ فَكَاتِبُوهُم. Allah is encouraging that any slaves that wants to buy his freedom, set him free. Let's keep all these points in mind because they're all going to come together at the end. So the first way that was general encouragement, the Quran is telling us that free slaves. The next point we discussed right now was the Prophet ﷺ's action on the freeing of slaves. Okay? What was the third one? Can I keep everyone's attention? Inshallah. Yes, there it is. He's paying attention. If the slave wants to buy his own freedom, then let him do so. And the Quran is encouraging this. This was the third method. The next thing is very important. Islam made it part of the fiscal policy, the policy of economics in the country, that slaves should be freed. How so? إنما الصدقات للفقراء والمساكين وبني السبيل. At the end of the ayah, وفي الرقاب. One of the people who can receive zakat money is to free a slave. Now what is zakat? We have to understand this. Zakat was the tax in Sharia basically. Correct? Everyone has to pay zakat who has wealth. Correct? One of the places you can spend your zakat is in freeing a slave. So these are ways in which the Sharia was pushing slavery out the door. The next thing. So let's keep all these in mind. First thing is general encouragement. Next thing was the Rasul ﷺ doing it himself. Third thing was, if they want to buy their freedom, the Quran is saying, let them buy their freedom. The fourth thing was, fourth one, zakat. Zakat money could go to the slave. Next thing, there are many sins in Islam. When a person does, he has to expiate that bad deed. He has to cancel that deed out. Many of the sins that are committed, Islam said, in order to expiate this deed, free a slave. Example, you break an oath. You make an oath and you break your oath, free a slave. Manslaughter, unintentional murder, manslaughter, free a slave. You break your fast in Ramadan, free a slave. And Islam, one more thing, the buying of relatives. It became a rule that if anyone buys a relative, that person instantaneously becomes free. And that's what's being discussed in this hadith here today. One more thing. So that's on one platform. The next way what Islam did was it changed the relationship between the slave and the master. This is absolutely amazing and unheard of. And this is very important for you guys to understand, because people will bring objections against Islam. That your claim to be Muslim, your Quran encourages slavery. So it's very important that you guys pay attention to these points, so you know the response to these objections. The first thing is this. When it comes to slave-master relations, number one, what happened? Rasulullah ﷺ made a rule. لا يقول أحدكم At'im rabbak. Rasulullah ﷺ made it a rule that the master could never be called Rabb. Does anyone remember what this word Rabb meant? Provider. Well, who do we use Rabb for? Allah. Before Islam, they would call their master Rabb. And what would this master call the slave? Abd. As we say Abdullah, slave of Allah. This would be Abd Fulan, such and such person's slave. Rasulullah ﷺ said, no, the master can never be called Rabb. Now he should be called Sayyidi. Sayyidi. And the slave should be called Fataya, my young boy. My young boy. By Rasulullah ﷺ changing the words, it changes the mentality. Just by Rasulullah ﷺ changing the name, the entire mentality changed. Today he's calling him my slave. Tomorrow now he has to call him my son. Imagine the relationship change. The next thing, the Quran itself said, وَاعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ وَلَا تُشْرِكُوا بِهِ وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. We discussed this ayah, that worship Allah and do not create partners with Allah, and do what? Be kind to your parents. At the end of this ayah, who does it say be kind to? وَمَا مَلَكَتْ أَيْمَانُكُمْ. And those things, those slaves who are under your possession. Overworking the slave. Rasulullah ﷺ said, never overwork the slave. If you give him something that is too much for him to do, you have to help him. You yourself have to help him. What do we see happening? We'll get to the conclusion as we get through all these points. But everyone has to keep in mind the whole big picture so we can understand how ingenious and absolutely amazingly Islam dealt with the problem of slavery. The next thing, Islam, Rasulullah ﷺ made the basic needs of the slave equal to the basic needs of the owner. Whatever you're wearing, you have to make him wear the same thing. It was one Sahabi, it's narrated, that he had a slave and he's walking around with a red qamis, a red shirt, and a different color bottom. His pants or whatever he was wearing underneath was a different color. And his slave was wearing red pants and the other color top. So someone said to him, you know, this is crazy. Why don't you wear one color, the whole thing, and let him wear the whole suit? That way you both have the one whole complete suit. He said, no. Rasulullah ﷺ told me we have to be exactly fair with them. So I'm going to wear half of this one, he's going to wear half of this one. People don't do that today with their children. Forget with slaves. The problem with our society is when we hear the word slave, we go back to the European slave trade, which was barbaric, to say the least. So right away it goes slavery. Well, that thing? No. Tell them this story about slavery. Let's continue. All types of oppression to a slave were instantaneously by Rasulullah ﷺ. This is the fifth point for those taking points. All types of oppression were instantaneously... Oh, one more hadith, going back to the fourth point, I'm sorry. Not only were you told to wear what your slave wears, but you were ordered to eat exactly what your slave eats. Eat exactly what your slave eats. Not give them the dirty part of the animal. It's interesting, in the culture that I grew up in America, there's certain things we eat which are absolutely disgusting. The reason those things are eaten is because it was passed down from the forefathers that they were eating these things. The only reason they ate them because they weren't allowed the actual part of the animal. They had to eat this part. Some countries, guys, still eat that stuff, but the intestines. The point is, Islam said, what you eat, the slave has to eat the exact same thing. The Rasul ﷺ said, if he makes it for you and there's not enough for him, take a portion and feed it to him with your own hand. This is a slave we're talking about. Rasulullah ﷺ is telling the believers that he has to eat exactly what you're eating. Let's continue on. All types of oppression were immediately banned. Any type of oppression on a slave. There's a story of Abu Mas'ud al-Ansari. Abu Mas'ud al-Ansari rahimahullah ta'ala. He says one day, it just so happened that something happened and he was hitting his slave. He was hitting his slave forcefully. And someone from behind him says, Ya Abu Mas'ud, O Abu Mas'ud, Allah has more power on you than you have over this slave. He says, I turned around and I saw it was Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said, Huwa hurrun, he's free, Ya Rasulullah. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam told him, if you did not free him, you would have to pay him back on Yawm al-Qiyamah. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam made the slave equal to the master. That whatever you do to him, you're going to have to pay for it on Yawm al-Qiyamah. Not even physical oppression only, even mental oppression. Say, okay, now it's forbidden to physically touch them. Well, can we say anything we want? No. Rasulullah ﷺ says in a hadith, "Man qadhafa mamlukahu wa huwa bari'un mimma qala, jullida yawm al-qiyamah." That whoever accuses a slave of committing some adultery or some bad sin, on Yawm al-Qiyamah this person will be lashed. Why? For what he said to his slave. Next thing, Rasulullah ﷺ ordered for the families to be kept together. It was forbidden to separate a mother from their son. If they're both slaves, forbidden to separate mother from son. These are very important points. These points, if you have all of them, then this is very important, because a lot of people have objections. And ourselves, we read the Quran and say, slavery, what's going on? Again, I'm reiterating this so we understand why I'm spending so much time on this. So we say, what is up with this? Why is the Quran condoning slavery? Now you can understand through these points the slavery the Quran is talking about and the slavery which is in the minds of people today. There's a difference, and we have to clarify this difference. Inshallah. So the hadith says, "Man farraqa bayna walidatin wa waladiha, farraqa Allahu baynahu wa bayna muhibbatihi yawm al-qiyamah." That whoever splits a mother and their son, or any relation, brother and his little brother, brother and sister, Allah will split him from those who He loves on the Day of Judgment. He won't be with those who He loves on the Yawm al-Qiyamah. How many stories we read about in the slavery of America where families were just torn apart. And because of that, many of the people don't know they were Muslim. Because in one generation, Islam was taken out of people's lives. Separate them from their parents, and automatically you can raise them whatever religion you want them to be. So Islam set a rule. Once Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu was given 2 slaves, 2 brothers. And he was given these slaves to go sell. After he sold these slaves, Rasulullah ﷺ said, what happened with the slaves? He says, I sold them. He said, did you sell them together or separate? He said, I separated. Rasulullah ﷺ was very anxious. He said, Adrik, go back, cancel the transaction. You cannot do this. Rasulullah ﷺ was very strong on this rule. Very strong. What else happened? Islam gave the right for slaves to own property. Slaves were given the right. Rasulullah ﷺ says in a hadith, Man a'taqa abdan walahu malan. Walahu malan. This hadith tells us that a slave could own wealth. So basic now, this is the end of all of these points. What do we learn from this? What do we get from this? We see this. There was a problem prior to Islam, which was slavery. And when Islam came, Islam chose to reform the problem, not to end the problem. Can anyone tell me why? Why Islam chose not to end it right away? It creates a bigger problem. In 1861 through 1865, 665,000 people were killed in something called the Civil War, because the American government chose to free slaves like that. Islam chose to reform and encourage people to give up slavery and disencourage it in every way possible, making the slave like your own family. In contrast, what we see in the American history is when they tried to end slavery at one time, 665 people died in 4 years. 1861 through 1865. 365, 700 and, I don't have the figure, 725,000 just on the Union side were dead or wounded. So now, if someone is to object against Islam's condonement of slavery, first we have to understand that no. Islam doesn't condone slavery. All of these points we just read here, we spent 15 to 20 minutes discussing these points. Islam doesn't condone slavery. It reformed it. Why, brother, doesn't Islam cancel slavery? One ayah from the Quran, slavery's ended. No, because we don't want to happen in our history what happened in your history, where a civil war breaks out. Not only this, the economic repercussions of freeing an entire workforce of people overnight was unimaginable. All of a sudden there's no workers, with nowhere to go. Islam's way of dealing with slavery is absolutely amazing. If you take these points which we discussed and think over these points, you should have no objections in your mind to how Islam dealt with slavery. And why does the Quran still talk about slavery? Because it reformed it rather than eradicate it and get rid of it in one shot. Inshallah, I hope especially all the youth can understand this point.
I mean, there is one more point also, that the time of the reform, gradually, it gave an opportunity to the slaves themselves to be trained how to survive by themselves when they are free, and how to raise families.
Exactly, very good point.
Another thing I think if I remember this probably correctly, isn't there a hadith along the lines or something about the nature of the meaning of which is, he who captures a free man and makes him into a slave and let him find his place in the fire?
Exactly. All of these hadith were going against practices which were done very commonly at that time. And Rasulullah ﷺ canceled all of those things out. So we spent a good 25 minutes on this topic of slavery just so that we understand in our deen. Many times we're reading the Quran and you're thinking, why? Why is Allah allowing slavery to go? So that is why we discussed this in detail, and inshallah I hope everyone can remember some of those points, and we'll have the CDs later if someone wants to just listen to the CDs. It's sometimes easier, inshallah. So going on to the next hadith, inshallah. Hadith number 11. حدثنا آدم قال حدثنا شعبة قال حدثنا سعيد بن أبي بردة قال سمعت أبي يحدث أنه سمع بن عمر رجل يماني يطوف بالبيت حمل أمه وراء ظهره يقول إني لها بئيرها المذلل إن أذرئت ركابها لم أذرع ثم قال يا ابن عمر أتراني جزيتها؟ قال لا ولا بزفرة واحدة. ثم طاف ابن عمر فأتى المقام فصلى ركعتين ثم قال يا ابن أبي موسى إن كل ركعتين تكفران ما أمامهما. Abu Burda radiyallahu ta'ala anhu reported that he heard his father say that Ibn Umar Ibn Umar, we discussed Ibn Umar in detail before, so we won't go back into his biography. Ibn Umar radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, he saw a man from Yemen doing tawaf, Hajj time, bil bayt, doing tawaf bil bayt of the Kaaba. Hamala ummahu wara'a dhahrihi. He's carrying his mother on his back. The commentators tell us that this man had done the entire Hajj with his mother on his back. The entire Hajj with his mother on his back. يقول, he said, إني لها بَعِيرُهَا الْمُذَلَّلِ. He said, I am her humble ride, her humble camel. When all the other camels are scared or give up and go away, I'm still here forever. ثُمَّ قَالَ يَا بَنَ عُمَرَ. This is a near translation of the poem. ثُمَّ قَالَ يَا بَنَ عُمَرَ. He said, Oh Ibn Umar. Now the man carrying his mother, whole Hajj, from Yemen to Mecca, tawaf, sa'i, everything. And now he turns to Ibn Umar. And not only that, he's saying a poem as if to say, I'll do it forever. I'll never give this up. I'll carry her on my back as long as it takes. He turns to Ibn Umar and look at what he says. Atarani jazaytuha? Did I pay her back? Did I pay her back for what she did for me? He says, no. La wala bi zafratin wahida. Well, many of us can't understand this. We haven't witnessed it. We haven't seen someone giving birth. Maybe soon some of us will, witness that, but we haven't seen that. So, he says, you haven't even repaid her for one breath she took while giving birth to you. Not the entire birth process. One breath that your mother took giving birth to you. The pain she was going through to bring you into this world, you could have done many Hajj with her on your back. You haven't paid her back. You haven't paid her back yet. ثُمَّ طَافَ Ibn Umar. Let's stop here for a minute. Why is it impossible for us to pay back our mothers? There's two reasons, and you may be thinking of many reasons. But there's two reasons that I think we should mention. When a mother takes care of her son, or a father for that matter, they take care of that son or daughter with such a love that I want him to live forever. I want him to continue on. I want him to, as much as he needs me, I don't care. I'm always going to be here for you. Is this true? When the son takes care of the father, he's thinking in his mind, there's only a little bit of time left. How long will, I won't have to do this forever. This is true. There's one more reason. And this is very deep if you think about this. Whenever we take care of the parents, we're looking at all these hadith about the reward. Look at the reward. Look at the reward. Look at the reward. 5 weeks we've been talking about it. When your mother or father takes care of you, they never even thought about reward. It's just out of love. They never even thought about reward. But how much do we have to talk about the reward for obeying your parents, honoring your parents in order for us to do it? We want the ajr. We want the reward. They do it for their love for us. ثُمَّ طَافَ Ibn Umar. Back to the hadith. Then Ibn Umar, he did his tawaf. فَأَتَى الْمَقَامِ. He came to the place of Ibrahim, the maqam Ibrahim. فَصَلَّ رَكَعَتَيْنِ. He prayed 2 rak'ats. And this is absolutely beautiful. Everyone listen closely. ثُمَّ قَالَ. Now the topic is changing. ثُمَّ قَالَ يَا بَنَ أَبِي مُوسَى. The person that was with him, he says, يَا بَنَ أَبِي مُوسَى. O son of Abi Musa, remember this. every 2 rakats, they cancel out or expiate or nullify whatever was done before it. These 2 rakats, whenever we pray, these 2 rakats are gaining the forgiveness for whatever was done before these 2 rakats. This is the status of these 2 rakats in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How long does it take to pray 2 rakats? Honestly. Don't not Taraweeh 2 rakats. Minute. Someone's honest. Alhamdulillah. A minute and a half.
Yeah, we're going to do it quicker than that, but...
2.
2 minutes.
2.
2 minutes.
How many extra rakat do we pray daily? Not none, come on, inshallah, not none. How many rakat do we pray extra daily?
2.
We should at least have the sunan. Leave the sunan. Leave the sunnahs. Because I'm just going to do husn al-dhan, that everyone prays sunnahs. Let's leave that. Everyone prays their sunnahs. Besides the sunnahs, how many rakat do we personally have to offer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Nafil. 4? That's good, alhamdulillah. 4, that means 2 minutes. 2, 4, 6, 8 minutes. That took 8 minutes. How do we get in the habit of praying extra rak'ah? Tell you a very easy way. Get in the habit of praying these 2 minutes in between things. We said this before. You're on the computer, it's downloading, you're watching the bars. Pray 2 rakats. Don't sit there and watch it download. How easy it is to pray those 2 rakats. I guarantee you're going to pray those 2 rakats, it's still downloading. I promise you. You're going out shopping with your family, 2 rakats very quickly before we leave. How long? 2 minutes? If that. You come home, 2 rakats. I guarantee if we get in the habit of in between things, just 2 minutes. And inshallah Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will fill our day with much barakah. Much barakah. And what's the benefit of these 2 rakats? Look, yukaffirani ma amamahuma. They cancel and cross out everything that was before these 2 rakats. So don't let shaitan play with us that 2 rakats, oh, that's too much. No, fight him back. No, 2 rakats, 2 minutes, very quickly. Okay, we're in the car. We're driving. Do you know Rasulullah ﷺ on his camel would pray nafil in any direction? Husband's driving, wife is sitting there. No one's doing anything. She can pray nafil. 2 rakats is easy. Oh, Qibla. No, Rasulullah ﷺ, any direction. Any direction. Now, Rasulullah ﷺ was driving the camel. We should not maybe do it while we're driving, because that may be a little more dangerous. But at least the passenger should get in the habit of 2 rakats. How hard is that? This will grow our love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, one more thing that happens. If you prayed 8 rak'ah nafil today, do you think you're going to miss any fard? You're not going to miss fard. Remember what we talked about in the first days of ADAB-UL-MUFRAD? What did we talk about? Man tahawana fil adab uqiba bihurman as-sunan. وَمَنْ هَاوَنَ بِالسُّنَنِ, correct me if I make a mistake, عُقِبَ بِحُرْمَانِ الْفَرَائِضِ. That whoever leaves the adab and extras, he's going to end up leaving the sunnahs too. And whoever leaves up the sunnahs, I'm not going to pray my sunnahs today. Sooner or later he's going to end up leaving the obligatory too. So when we get in the habit of just praying 2 rakats, I guarantee we'll be far away from missing our fard. You won't even allow yourself to get to that level. Any questions regarding this hadith before we go on to the next hadith? Hadith number 12 on page 55. Hadith number 12 on page 55. حدثنا عبد الله بن صالح قال حدثنا ليث قال حدثني قادر بن يزيد عن سعيد بن أبي حلال عن أبي حازم عن أبي مرة مولى عقيل أن أبا هريرة رضي الله تعالى عنه كان يستخلفه مروان. Abi Murra, the Mawla, the freed slave of Aqil. Now, here's a word here. In the Arabi, whoever can keep up with the Arabi, it says, An Abi Murra Mawla Aqil. The English, it says, Abu Murra, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, the freed slave of Aqil, radiyallahu anhu. Another thing that we did in regards of slavery, we talked about slavery for the first 25 minutes, correct? Another concept was that whoever freed a slave, that slave instantaneously became the mawla of the family that freed him. If someone died and no one was there, he would inherit money. If he died leaving money, they would inherit from him. This person became like a family member. A person became like a family member. Let's continue. We've spoken about slavery for the first 20 minutes, so we'll continue on. أن أبا هريرة رضي الله عنه كان يستخلفه مروان. Keep up with me in this hadith. That Marwan was the governor of Medina. After Ibn Zubayr's time as Khalifa, Marwan was the governor of Medina. Everyone has to keep up with the names in the time period in order to understand this hadith. Okay? So Marwan was what? A governor of Medina. Marwan is a tabi'i. Who's a tabi'i? You know it. I know you know it.
Governor of Medina?
No. That's good though. That's a good answer. A tabi'i. I'm going to get to the older ones in a minute. No? A tabi'i. Tabi'i. No? It's not in the book. Okay.
Did you mention it before? Yeah.
You listening? A tabi'i is a generation, the generation that saw Sahaba.
So, not come up.
Yeah, not come after. Saw. They saw the Sahabi. Okay, everyone remember that now?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I'm going to ask again later. Marwan was a tabi'i. He was the governor of Medina. And when he would leave Medina to go do something, he would put Abu Huraira as the Khalifa of Medina. Not of the whole, all the Muslims, just of Medina. Do you understand the situation? Does anyone have does anything strike someone odd about this situation?
Is he like a slave?
No, he's not a slave. Why? Something should strike us odd. Ashab al-Suffa, yeah. But there's something...
We're going to say, why is the Marwan the governor?
Yeah, thank you. Why is Marwan the governor? And there's Sahabi, Abu Huraira is there. We're not going to get into that today. Okay, that will make it very confusing. But the question should be why... We all know Sahaba have such a status. With knowledge and piety and everything. Why is Marwan making Abu Huraira the Khalifa? It should be Abu Huraira, when he leaves, he makes Marwan the Khalifa. This was a time of, let's just say, heavy politics. This was a very political time. And we all know how politics work. When someone wants to be in charge, everything's allowed. Mudslinging, everything. They'll do whatever it takes to get power. What does Islam say about politics? What does Islam say about giving positions to people? Let's look into this. There is one hadith of Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, لا تسألوا العمارة فإنك إن أعطيتها من مسألة وكلت إليها. Rasulullah ﷺ says in this hadith, never ask to be a leader. This is important. This is very important stuff. Never ask to be a leader. Because if you are given leadership after asking, Allah will make you وَكِلْتُ إِلَيْهَا. You will handle it yourself. But وَإِنْ أُعْتِيتَهَا عَنْ غَيْرِ مَسْأَلَةٍ, but if you get it without asking, Allah will help you. In another hadith, Rasulullah ﷺ said, أَنَا وَاللَّهِ لَا نُوَلِّي عَلَى هَذَا الْعَمَلِ أَحَدًا أَسْأَلُهُ. We will never make in charge of any situation anyone that asks for the position. These hadith tell us what? The outward of these hadith.
Stay away from power to appointment.
Stay away from it, and there's something more directly that we shouldn't do. Asking for it. Exactly. Rasulullah ﷺ clearly said that we will never give this position to someone who asks for this position. وَلَا أَحَدٍ أَحْرَسَ عَلَيْهَا. And no one that is greedy for this position. So now we see in front of us, what's the political situation and what do we see in front of us today?
Today?
Yeah.
Today they fight for Dr. Run.
They're fighting for it. So according to these hadith, you know, as they say, well, George Washington didn't want to become the president. Rasulullah ﷺ said in the hadith, the best person for leadership is the one who doesn't want it the most. Who doesn't want it the most. He's the best person for leadership. So is it allowed for us to ask for positions of leadership? Can someone find an example in the Quran? Oh, okay, so hold it. Can anyone think of an example in the Quran of asking for leadership? Okay, I'll give you a big hint. He's a prophet. Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Nope.
Prophet Musa.
Musa? Nope. Prophet Yusuf. MashaAllah. If I had a watch on, I'd give it to you. But I don't have one. Prophet Yusuf. Yes. What did he ask for? Did someone tell you that? No. Okay, good. What did he ask for? The treasurer. Right? And take care of the farming and agriculture. Correct? What did he say? اجعلني على خزائن الأرض. He made a very clear proclamation. Make me in charge. Make me in charge. So what we learn from this, in light of the hadith and the Quran, that when you know it will not put you in sin, and when you're not doing it for fame or for wealth, and one more condition, that not doing it for fame, wealth, and you know that you will be able to do this job the best. Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam knew the situation and knew that he was best fit to handle this job. If these situations are there, by all means put yourself forward for the position. In light of this Quran ayah, اجعلني على خزائن الأرض. These hadith are referring to the situation where it's, for power, to get in control, and these situations. Now, what about voting? Now, because where we live there is no candidates do not put forward religious views or anything like this. So obviously we're looking at the betterment of society. So of course voting is 100% jaiz and very good, and of course you should. But remember one thing. Voting is a testimony. Shahada. Voting is saying, I bear witness that this is the best person according to me. And the Quran and Hadith have been very strict that whenever you give testimony, you give true testimony. You can't vote for someone because he's from your family. This is haram. You can't vote for someone because he's your race. You can't vote for someone because any other small petty reasons. You have to believe in your heart that this person is the best person for this job. Because otherwise, you're bearing false testimony. You have to be truthful to yourself and truthful to the testimony that you're giving.
Just to make something very clear, you said that if you know that you can handle it, then you ask for it. Anybody can come and claim that he knows and he can handle it and he's going to run for it and he's going to even fight for it.
Yeah.
The thing is the difference between us and the Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam. Number one, he grew up in Bayt al-Nubuwwah. His father was a prophet. Number one. Number two, he got the revelation. So he knew exactly what the problem is.
Yeah.
By revelation, not just claiming it that he knows it.
Very true. Very good point.
So nobody can just come and say, hey, I know the problem.
I'm the best one, yes.
So Islamically, I'm qualified to run for it.
Yeah. Very good point. Very good point. Yes?
So if that is the case with voting and election, so what would be the best way according to you, or according to Islam, in electing members of the board, the EC board?
I don't know. She's asking about electing and voting for members of the EC board. You shouldn't vote for people, again, what did we say? You don't vote for people based on this, my family, this, that. You have to believe that this person can fulfill the task. And believe in your heart, this is the reason. Otherwise, this is false testimony. And we can't give false testimony. We have to be very, I don't know a direct answer, but the answer is truthfulness to ourselves. Truthful. Allah will ask you, why did you vote for this person? You bore witness and gave testimony that this person was suitable. But did you really know that in your heart? Allah will ask you when you put that vote in, why were you voting for that person? It may be he's the best. But what is your niyyah for voting for him? Because he's from your same background?
I'm sorry to keep interrupting you. When it comes, for instance, to the political arena in this society, yes, none of them are talking about religious views or whatever it is, so we have to look for the betterment of the society. That's different.
Yes.
When we come to the EC board, we are running religious affairs.
Yes.
So we have to go according to Sharia. The best man who we can fit, we have to choose him, not to run and vote.
For sure. Maybe we should go forward, inshallah, for more explanation, because this is a never-ending, topic. Very good point.
I just want to make it very clear that
good.
Here is different from
very good point.
The campaign out there.
The more you talk about it, get me in trouble.
Let's go forward. The next thing we need to look at is the hadith now. We weren't done with the hadith, we just started the hadith. So, when Marwan was going outside of the city, he would make Abu Hurairah radiallahu ta'ala anhu his khalifa in place of him. وَكَانَ يَكُونُ بِذِي الْحُلَيْفَةِ. And Abu Hurairah lived in Dhul Hulayfa. Dhul Hulayfa is a suburb of Medina. Now Medina has spread, so it's kind of in the city. At that time it was a suburb of Medina. Why was he living in the suburb of Medina, not in the city? Because of the same reason why Marwan was in charge. There was a lot of fitna going on at that time. So he did not move far away from the city, but staying in the city was for some Sahaba unbearable because of the fitna at that time. فَكَانَتْ, let's get to the main part of the hadith, why it's in this chapter. فَكَانَتْ أُمُّهُ فِي بَيْتٍ وَهُوَ فِي آخَرٍ. Abu Hurairah lived in one house, his mother lived in another house. قال فإذا أراد أن يخرج وقف على بابها فقال السلام عليك يا أمتا ورحمة الله وبركاته. As he was going to his position to be Khalifa in place of Marwan, he would stop at his mother's house, go to the door, and say Assalamu alaikum ya ummata, a word of love for the mother. Wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. He would give his salam. And fataqul, she would say to him, wa alayka Ya bunayya wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. And she would return the salam to him. فَيَقُولُ Now, you may be thinking, big deal. Let's picture it. Let's picture the situation. You're leaving your house, going to the governor's office to be governor. You're the man. You're in charge. You're the head honcho. Right? Look at the humbleness in Abu Hurairah. No matter how high we go, no matter how much we get, we have to remember our mother is our mother no matter what. He's going to the governor's office, but before he does anything, I'm going to say salam to my mother. See, today, humbleness in high positions normally don't go together. Right? The point here is the humbleness that we need to look at. Look at the humbleness of Abu Hurairah in this situation. He's going to be Khalifa of the entire city, but before he goes, what is he doing? He's stopping at his mother's house just to say salam and pray for her. فَيَقُولُ رَحِمَكِ اللَّهِ كَمَا رَبَّتْنِي صَغِيرًا رَبَّيْتِنِي صَغِيرًا. He would say to her, may Allah have mercy upon you the way you raised me when I was little. فَتَقُولُ رَحِمَكَ اللَّهُ كَمَا بررتني كبيرا ثم إذا أراد أن يدخل صنع مثله. He would say to her that, may Allah have mercy upon you the way you raised me when I was small. And she would say to him, may Allah have mercy on you the way you have honored me when you grew old. And when he was coming back home, after now Marwan is coming back, he's going back to his regular position, he would do the same thing, returning back home to visit his mother, and then go home. So the main point in this hadith we need to look at is we discuss the political aspect. That whenever we give a vote, we need to make sure that our heart is behind that vote, that we sincerely believe what we're voting for. Second thing is that we need to understand that when asking for positions, remember the hadith are clear. We don't ask for positions. The positions should be given to the one who feels he's least capable. Because the one who feels he's least capable, if someone thinks that he is totally capable, many times he hasn't understood the complexity of the situation. But the one who says, I can't handle this, he's understood how complex and detailed the situation is. That shows his wisdom. That's why he's more deserving of this position. I hope we understand this point. It's a very important point. And then the main point of the hadith is how even when he's going to be governor, he's stopping at the house of his mother just to say salam to her. It's very beautiful. Hadith 13 on page 56. Hadith 13 on page 66. قال حدثنا أبو نعيم قال حدثنا سفيان عن عطاء بن سائب عن أبيه عن عبد الله بن عمر رضي الله تعالى عنه وقال جاء رجل إلى النبي. Abdullah ibn Umar says, Abdullah ibn Umar, actually it should be Amr. It's Amr. Abdullah ibn Amr. There's a space, if you look at the Arabic in this book, it's spaced out. Abdullah ibn Amr narrates that a man came to the Prophet ﷺ to do bay'ah on hijrah, to pledge allegiance on doing the hijrah, migrating to Medina. وَتَرَكَ أَبَوَيْهِ يَبْكِيَانِ. When he went for hijrah to migrate, he left his parents in a situation where they were crying for him. They were remorseful that he was leaving, so they were crying. فَقَالَ إِرْجِعْ إِلَيْهِمَا. The Rasul ﷺ told him, no, go back to them. وَأَضْحِكْهُمَا كَمَا أَبْقَيْتَهُمَا. And make them laugh the same way you made them cry. This is the first time the name Abdullah ibn Amr is coming. Abdullah ibn Amr is a great sahabi of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Between Abdullah and Amr is only 11 years age. Father and son. Only 11 years age between the two of them. Abdullah ibn Amr is known for two great things: his worship and his knowledge. He had a lot of zeal for the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's one of the three people who came to Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha one day. You'll remember the hadith. And they asked about the worship of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And when Aisha told them about the worship, they said, he does so little because he's a prophet. So one of them said, I'm going to do ibadah the whole night. I'm never going to sleep at night. The second one said, and I'm going to fast every day. The third one said, and I'm never going to get married. Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha heard this. When she heard them say that, as soon as Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam came back home, she told him. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam right away called them all. Are you the three that said this? He said, I pray tahajjud and I sleep too. I fast some days, I eat also. And I get married. فَمَنْ رَغِبَ عَنْ سُنَّتِي فَلَيْسَ مِنِّي. Whoever turns away from my sunnah, he's not following my way. Abdullah ibn Amr also used to read the whole Quran in one day. Rasulullah ﷺ told him, no, you can't do that. He said, okay, I'll do it, in 2 days. He said, no, you can't do that. Too much. He said, okay, I'll do it. See, he had a love for the worship of Allah. He had that love for the Quran. And he was young. So he felt, I want to spend all of my energy worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So finally the Prophet ﷺ reduced him to 3 days. There's a story of when he got married. So his father, Amr, married him to a woman from Quraysh, from a very high family. Posh, right? Like very high class family. So one day, his father comes to meet his daughter-in-law, and he asks, how's your husband? She says, I wouldn't know. He never even touched my shoulder, and he doesn't sleep on the bed. What a great man. She literally said, what a great man. There's a point here we need to look at. She never complains clearly. She never said, now you're asking me, oh, he does this, he does this, he does this. No. She said, Ni'ma rajul. He's a great man. He prays tahajjud the whole night. Right away his father understood, she's not praising him, she's complaining. She's complaining. Abdullah ibn Amr's father got very upset. I married you to this woman, this, that, and you. So he went to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He's in trouble now. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam calls him. Come. You're up to it again. Same thing. So he said a very important hadith that we need to remember. Inna li aynayka haqq. There is a right for your eyes. Wali jasadika haqq. There is a right for your body. Wali zawjika haqq. And there is a right for your wife. There is a right that our eyes have on us, that they get sleep. There is a right that our body has, that it gets rest. And likewise, Rasulullah. Can we imagine? What is the Rasul sent for? To establish what? The worship of Allah, correct? So can we imagine that the whole purpose of Rasulullah ﷺ coming to the world was to guide people to the worship of Allah? But look at the balance. Look at the balance that Rasulullah ﷺ is teaching. That no, don't go overboard. Balance your life. Balance it. So, the Prophet ﷺ, this is very important that we understand the importance of balance in these ideas, because a lot of times we get a lot of excitement and then we forget the rights and responsibilities of our family. There's another thing about Abdullah ibn Amr which is very important. He was one of the people that used to write hadith at the time of the Prophet ﷺ. See, many of the Orientalists or those non-Muslims who study Islam will tell you that hadith weren't written until 200 centuries after. This is clearly wrong. Hadith were written at the time of Rasulullah ﷺ. At that time. Abu Hurairah radiyallahu ta'ala anhu says, لم يكن أحد من أصحاب رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أكثر حديثا مني. There was none of the Sahaba who knew more hadith than me. Remember, we talked about Abu Hurairah. Does anyone remember how many hadith Abu Hurairah narrated? 5,000. 5,000. So Abu Hurairah says, there's no one that had more hadith than me than Abdullah ibn Umar. فَإِنَّهُ كَانَ يَكْتُبُ وَلَا أَكْتُبُ. Because he used to write and I didn't write. He got special permission from Rasulullah ﷺ to write the hadith at the time of Rasulullah ﷺ. This is very important. This is very, very important. He had a book, Sahifat al-Sadiqah. The book, he presented it to Rasulullah ﷺ before he passed away. He says, I recited all of these hadith in front of the Rasul ﷺ. All of these hadith were written and in the time of Rasulullah ﷺ. This is very important, because many of the mustashriqeen, the Orientalists, will try to taint the history and tell you, no, hadith weren't written until Imam Bukhari. When was Imam Bukhari born? Come on. 194, mashallah. Brothers, he's not the youngest one here. MashaAllah. The youth should be, Yes, 194. So many of the Orientalists will tell us that hadith were not written until the 2nd century. This is a lie and fabricated. The hadith were written at the time of Rasulullah ﷺ. So it's very important and an important part of our history. This hadith talks about hijrah. Hijrah is migration. When we leave one place to another place. From Mecca to Medina, hijrah was compulsory. This is very important for those those taking notes. Take notes, but those listening, just listen closer. Hijrah was compulsory from Mecca because it was Darul Harb. Darul Harb, according to Sharia, is the place where a person cannot practice Islam. Islam is forbidden, state law. You can't practice it. The ruling is, hijrah from Darul Harb is fard. You have to do it. There's some other rulings about Darul Harb, like riba. Riba is allowed in Darul Harb. We spoke about riba last week, correct? Now, the second category is called Darul Aman. Darul Aman. The house of peace, you could say. No, security. Darul Aman would be the house of security. This is a place that is not a Muslim country, but you're allowed to practice your deen. Not a Muslim country, but you're allowed to practice your religion. And the third place is called Darul Islam, where the rules are according to Quran and Sunnah. So many times people will confuse Darul Harb and Darul Aman. Darul Aman. People will say riba is allowed, brother. In Darul Harb, riba is allowed. Brother, if this is Darul Harb, you need to be doing hijrah right now. Because hijrah is compulsory from Darul Harb. You can't live in Darul Harb. Very important. This is not Darul Harb, for the record. This is Darul Aman, security. We have the right to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yes, very good. Thank you. Alhamdulillah. There are 3 types of countries according to Sharia. The brother asked for an explanation. We're going to say it one more time. Let's start from the best. Darul Islam, where Sharia in the Quran and Sunnah are the laws. Number 2, Darul, the house of security, Darul Aman, where the laws aren't Islamic, but you are allowed to practice your religion. The third is called Darul Harb, where that country is at war with Islam, and you are not allowed to practice your religion in that place. The ruling according to Sharia is it's compulsory for you to leave that place. Don't stay in that place. You can't worship Allah and you make an excuse, I can't pray. In al-ardu wasiya, the earth is vast.
Is there any place right now that has it?
Place for what? Darul Islam?
No, Darul Harb.
No, I don't think so.
Darul Harb?
I don't think so. No.
There are only like 25.
Five. You understand? The reason we're bringing this up is because we spoke of riba last week. And some people have the concept that in Darul Harb, riba is allowed. Riba is allowed. Is there an objection? Why is riba allowed in Darul Harb?
Can you elaborate on hadith or where you getting this?
Oh, this is from Kutub al-Fiqh. This is from Fiqh. We'll explain inshallah. So, where were we?
Why is that riba allowed in Darul Harb?
Yes. Yes. We'll leave that point for right now. But as long as we all understand that there's a difference in Darul Harb and Darul Aman, this is very important because many times people confuse these 2 places. So, this is the outward hijrah. There's another type of hijrah, which is a more important hijrah. The hijrah away from sins and giving up that thing which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has forbidden. The one hijrah is the outward hijrah, that we give up a place and go to another place. But Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the hadith has said that the bigger hijrah is manahallahu an. That give up that thing which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has forbidden. Give that thing up. This is the true migration. This is the true hijrah. So when this word hijrah comes, we need to think of not only the outward hijrah, but we need to ask ourselves, are we doing the hijrah from those things which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has forbidden? And the last point of this hadith is, we spoke before that a sin done openly should be fixed openly. A sin done quietly should be fixed quietly. And likewise, if we look here, Rasulullah ﷺ told him to do what? The same way you made them cry, now you have to fix it. How do you fix it? Make them laugh. Make them happy. So we spoke about that thing before. Inshallah, we'll stop here with this hadith. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the tawfiq to act upon what was said. Inshallah. لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له له الملك وله الحمد وهو على كل شيء قدير لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له له الملك وله الحمد وهو على كل شيء قدير لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له له الملك وله الحمد وهو على كل شيء قدير